All right, someone today in the comments suggested that I write more about Gen Z. And I don't think I can do that directly, but I think that I can write about him and his generation in a more broad sense because he's been working for me for a few months now. And even though he's almost at the end of the spectrum of Gen Z, the behavior that I've seen uh, seem to point to a generation of people that don't understand that they're disposable, and that's why they're broke. Because I've tried to put it this way to him: what skills are you learning here? None. What path to a promotion do you have? None. What are the chances of you getting a pay raise? None. What are the chances of you being able to find a better job? None. He's been looking for work now since he started working there, since he figured it out. It took him a couple days to realize that this was McDonald's and that there were no career aspirations here. There was nothing. Just someone telling you just enough to keep you there and believing that someday you might get more out of this job. But the reality is, it's just a job. You're just meant to work it until you can find something better. And that's the problem with being a disposable worker. Is you're always looking for something better, but it may not be available. And that's the true hardship of being a disposable worker. You don't want to feel disposable, but because you have nothing to offer, your employers treat you like you have nothing to offer. For me, the only reason I can figure why I haven't been fired yet is because they would have a very hard time replacing me with someone that would take what they're paying me right now. A person that does as much management as I do would probably require double the salary. And they've done this before where they got tired of their low end, low performing workers and they decided that they could do better, but they didn't find anyone. And that came back to hurt them very badly. But with that said, let's get into today's monologue. They don't pay you based on how hard you work. They pay you based on how easy you are to replace. And if you're doing a job anyone can walk into tomorrow, they'll keep you broke just to remind you how lucky you are to have any job. That's not motivation. That's manipulation. You're not struggling because you failed. The system was built to make sure you never get ahead. Wow. Uh, Yikes. And that is so true. Whenever I hire a Gen Z at my job, they're completely replaceable. 100%. All I need is for someone who can put things inside of a box and who can take things out of a box. That's it. That's the whole job. When you don't have any specialization whatsoever, you have no special skills, and you have no work experience, you have no job security. And the whole idea of telling people this, and remember, I've said this 100 times, in low income areas, they used to put billboards that would say, any job is a good job. And do you know who paid for those? Millionaires. Millionaires who can't get anyone to lower themselves to flip burgers. Because anyone will flip burgers for $250,000 a year. It takes a special kind of desperation worker to flip burgers for $15,000 a year when your rent is $20,000 a year. It doesn't make sense, does it? As I've said, many of us can't afford to work. And corporations know that. They're well aware of the cost of living. You are just a number on an Excel spreadsheet, there today, gone tomorrow. If your job is that easy to replace, that you require no education or experience, then entry level jobs are where you're going to stay for the rest of your life. Because the sad part of this system is you have to get that experience somewhere. Because, in my opinion, corporations should offer schooling, right? They should offer on the job schooling like a trade school where they are going to train you in soft skills, technology, um, and anything else that they want you to learn, whether that's script writing, etiquette, proper speech. I mean, whatever they need you to be able to do, there should be corporations that are required to do this training, but they're not. They want you to have everything that they want, plus a bunch of things that they have their wish list of, and that's who they're looking for. And in a society this full of desperation, they will always find someone that will work for less money than you. Or they'll hold the carrot over your head and call it an unpaid internship and then at the end not hire you because they don't actually, they never actually wanted to pay you in the first place. And that experience, in my opinion, an unpaid internship means that you're willing to sacrifice your time to learn, but at the same time, they may not be interested in really teaching you anything. Because I've had a couple of them who had internships that couldn't install a light bulb, like to save their lives. Anyhow, let's get into our talking points here. Low pay equals high replaceability. I was going to say low pay equals low skill, but that's understood. The less specialized your job is, the more they treat you like a number. It's not about your work ethic, it's about how easy you are to replace. And companies know that keeping you underpaid keeps you obedient and afraid to speak up. This is something I've told Gen Z many times over the past couple of months, is that he thinks that his working really hard is going to make him less replaceable. Working really hard doesn't matter. You can work really hard as the best ditch digger there is in the world, or you could be working your rear off for a millionaire who runs a small business who uses minimum wage workers. And at the end of the day, if he doesn't like your face, he's going to fire you anyway. And that's the reality of work right now at the low end. And let's face it, we're in a service economy. Most jobs are on the low end. Very few jobs are going to be on the high end. Accessing high end jobs for low end people is just not possible. That's why you're so disposable. That's why during the pandemic, those people at the bottom realized that they might be sacrificed. And that's why instead of using what the system really wanted to say to them was, you're disposable, but you're not essential. Telling people that they're essential and disposable confused a lot of people. The people that actually went to work, the food workers, emergency workers, all the workers that went to work, knowing full well that the population that could work from home went straight home and locked the doors because they didn't want to be out there. And that's how most people knew that they were disposable. Anyone that has to sit in an office right now, in my opinion, is probably disposable. In fact, this week we were having a fight between departments because HR, in all of their infinite wisdom, decided to hire a person with no office space. And when they tried to shove them in an area where they didn't belong, that department brought out its claws. And they're like, we don't want that person here. They don't work here. They are not going to sit here with us. And I guess they got a real bad taste in their mouth when they shoved one of the technology workers on the server side into their area. And now she sits there surrounded by people who work in one department, people who work in another department, but no one she knows. She'll never talk to anyone in her area based on her job. And so I thought that was kind of strange. But they did that, and it ruffled some feathers. Talking point number 2. The system rewards control, not effort. Hard work doesn't equal high income anymore. It's not about what you do, it's about how much control your employer has over you. Disposable workers are paid just enough to survive, but never enough to escape. And you know what escape means in this talking point? Escape means comfort. You are not allowed to get comfortable at work. You're not allowed to have any safety at work. You're not even allowed to have medical insurance at work because they want to turn every job into a hustle job, right? They want every worker to cost the corporation as little as humanly possible. And to that extent, look what they've done to the economy. Most people who lose their jobs right now will have to do something in an emergency. What does that mean? That means gig work. And if you're doing gig work, if you're doing DoorDash, Lyft, and Uber right now, you're not living a comfortable life. Sure, some of them may make good money, but you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can't get comfortable with a job like that. And the less comfortable you are, the more control they have over that tiny little income that they give you. If you're making $500 a week from Evil Corp and your rent is $2,000 a month, you know what? You just became a person that has to have three jobs, three minimum wage jobs because you can't find anything better, because there is nothing better for you. That's why you're broke. Because to them, making certain that you never own anything, right, is part of the system that's going to employ you. You're not worth anything, so they don't pay you anything. And you will learn to be happy while you own nothing. It's just part of the way that you're supposed to be. One of the main reasons why I run this channel is because I can't stand the idea of normalizing these things. It's not normal to be this broke. It's not normal to be hungry. It's not normal to take a job that doesn't pay you enough to live on. And the way the economy right now is, it's getting worse every single day. We all know that it's getting worse. And for anyone that's out there right now thinking, "Oh, this is a phase. It will even itself out at the end of the day." No, it's not. Do you know why I'm telling you that? Because they're trying to normalize what's going on right now. I was just at Kroger's and they wanted $8 for a 6 pack of Coke. I'm like, holy crap. You know, I have a paycheck that has the buying power of $5 an hour. And you kind of just like look around and you see no one's getting mad. I expect to walk into a grocery store and see a person flip out at $10 eggs, or start throwing things off the shelf and stomping on them, or just walking up to people and just throwing food in their face. And it's not the employee's fault. The employees have to buy that same food too. The employees don't get free food, but they represent Evil Corp inside of that grocery store. And when you get mad, you look around to see who's wearing a uniform, and then you go let them have it. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to talk about that. I was leaving the Evil Corp corporate building yesterday, and the security guard was laughing hysterically at his computer because he was watching some guy get beaten up on the street. Anyhow, pro entertainment 100%. Talking point number 3: fear is a business strategy. They keep you broke on purpose because when you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're not going to question anything. You're not going to unionize. You're not going to leave. And you'll do whatever it takes to not get fired. That's my job in a nutshell. They know that the workers are beaten down. Everyone in the tech group is making well below market value. Way, way below, to the point where most of them will work an extra 20 plus hours a week of overtime because they have to. And the corporation turns the other cheek when it sees that the workers are being forced to work overtime. Many of them work weekends and nights because they're not making it. And I would say that more than half of the tech department lives at home. That that's the part that should frighten every person in America that works for an hourly wage right now. These are 40-year-old men living with their mother because they can't afford their own home. They work full time, they work overtime, they have second jobs, and they still don't make enough money to be able to afford their own home. And I'm talking home, not dirty, disgusting, roach infested hellhole bed and toilet. In fact, this morning I got up and I was really, really angry at this apartment complex. They put an eviction letter on my door yesterday because their website didn't work. Like, okay, I my whatchamacallit, my rent is automatically deducted from my paycheck. And this month they failed to put the correct amount. So I didn't know, when your bills are on auto pay, I didn't know. I didn't even think to look. It just gets paid every month. But for some reason, they just decided not to charge me this month. So I went over to the office, told them that the plumbing was broken in my apartment again, and asked them what was wrong. And they said, "Oh, it looks like you're all caught up. Come home from work yesterday, and they're giving me 5 days to leave." And I'm like, okay. But at the same time, this is how I knew they knew that they were in the wrong, because it's the 22nd day of this month, and there isn't one penny on my rent of late fees. And if I had seen one penny, believe me, I would have let them have it yesterday. In fact, I saw the letter. I walked down to the leasing office and I was furious. They are lucky they closed half an hour early yesterday, or else I would have let them have it. And I put in a request to move out of this apartment as soon as humanly possible, because of violations of safety. There is so much cockroach crap in this house, and there's nothing I can lift up in the kitchen where cockroaches don't come out of everywhere, especially my router and my modem, my cable modem. You touch that thing and they just start flying out of it, and I'm like, oh my God, it's disgusting. All right, moving on to my final talking point. You are not the problem. The system is. You're not broke because you're lazy or bad with money. You're broke because you were never meant to have a living wage. The economy was designed to take everything it can from you, exploit the living crap out of you as a disposable worker while giving you as little as humanly possible. So they exploit, 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 and then when it comes time to give you something at the end of the week, you look at the paycheck and you're like, "What am I going to buy with $300?" And and this happened to me. My first paycheck at Walmart was $300, and at the time my rent was $600 a month. And I looked at the lady and I'm like, "Is there something wrong with this paycheck?" And she's like, "No, that's about what the average worker makes working 19 to 25 hours a week." And I looked at her like, how do you live on this?" And she's like, "You don't." And I really never spoke to that person ever again after that morning, because she looked at me as if I was the one that was insane, questioning how much money I made to management. They're like, are you stupid, millennials, Stan? Is anybody home in that coconut? That's a normal retail paycheck, because they never want to pay you. At the end of the week, when that general manager has to look deep in his wallet to pay his workers, he wants to pay them whatever he feels like. In fact, that's a video that I'm probably going to make later on today, where they talk about having workers, again, the general manager, clock out and then keep working so that they don't get paid a single hour of overtime. I couldn't believe I was reading this article a couple days ago and I was just like, really? But then I remember they used to do this to us when I worked in retail. If the um if the truck that arrived for you to unload it wasn't complete by the time your shift was over, you were expected to stay regardless. And anyone who wouldn't stay, the punishment was they cut your hours the next week based on the fact that you were not a team player because you didn't stay the extra time. That's the way these corporations work. They always want to take, but when it comes time to giving, they're nowhere around. They're like an abusive partner in a relationship. It's like, well, I give, and she's like, well, aren't you going to give back? It's like, nah, not today. I got a headache. But wait a minute, when do I get my cookie? It's like, that was never part of the plan. And you kind of look at it and it's like, am I going to stay in this wretched relationship? What other choice do you really have?